Recording in progress. Here we are again, Miss Marla.
You miss us?
Yeah, we're back again. And our topic for today is
Blisters?
blisters. Blisters.
With this conversation. I don't know.
You don't want to have this conversation? It was your
No,
idea.
I just said, who came up with this idea?
You did,
I
as
know.
usual.
I know.
That was the question I kept asking every time we were walking up the Pyrenees. Whose idea was it? It was yours. I'm grateful for that idea. Um,
Yeah.
and maybe some of our watchers, listeners, viewers, whatever you want to call it, will be grateful for your idea this time as well.
Really? All right. We'll
Because they're
see.
going to learn how to take care of their blisters. I'm so excited. Oh, geez. So last week we talked about little bags. So I have to get rid of my background, my beautiful background. This is right near. Do you remember where this is, Marla?
No.
This picture behind me is a mountain on the Pyrenees. Well, it's, I guess, the Pyrenees, on the path from, what was the first place we stayed at? Starts
Mount
with
Roncesvalles.
no. It starts with
Orison.
Oris, yeah, Orison. And it's on our way to Roncesvalles, and it's right before we get to, or right in front of, or behind the Blessed Virgin Mary statue that we
Oh.
take pictures at. So that's where that is. But now I have to get rid of it because I want to show something. Come on, go away. So last week we talked about little bags. So these are the little bags that I bought. They're plastic. They have Velcro. So it's like airtight, waterproof bags. I actually bought these before I went or planned on the Camino. This is what I take to the lake when I go on my kayak. But so I have all my goodies to show to take care of blisters. And last week I mentioned, you said Vaseline, remember, Marla?
Mm-hmm.
And I said there was a tube that I used. Remember, it was Aquaphor. That's what it was.
Yeah.
It's a tube. It's healing ointment. It's called, but it's very similar to um, Vaseline, and it has like this is like a little foamy, like soft thing. You just rub it on your feet. So that was what was recommended to me when I went. So that's what I bought, and that kept the feet like moist and kind of like slipping around, so there was no friction.
Mm-hmm.
Although, when you start not taking care of your feet and walking and trying to keep up with everybody and being silly, uh, you wind up with blisters regardless.
Yeah.
We did.
Well, I guess what was it? Somebody told me the three ingredients for blisters are heat, moisture,
And friction.
and friction. So if you have any one of those things, I don't think if you have any one of those things, you're going to
Yeah.
get blisters.
Yeah.
So if your feet are hot, you have to cool them down. So sometimes, and you'll feel like you're walking along, you'll feel a hot spot just develop on your foot.
Mm-hmm.
And so the thing to do is just stop where you are, take your boot off, take your socks off, and let your feet cool down.
Right.
And then when, it takes usually about 5-10 minutes, then you redress your foot and you start again. But
Yeah.
when you feel that heat building, and when you're on your feet all day, lots of us think we know what walking all day is like because you think, well, I'm on my feet all day. My watch says I walk 5 miles a day. So it's not the same. It's
No.
not the same as when you're walking to a destination
Yeah.
all day. So you will develop hot spots. So you have to be really sensitive to that. And it's a new feeling, because we just don't get that in the way that we exercise or, walk about our lives.
Right. And one of the things, I mean, I guess there's two different ways to approach the feet. One is prevention, so what you start out doing in the morning, right?
Mhm.
So doing in the morning, this is what I did in the morning. Then we had these like little ace bandages, remember that?
Yep.
So you kind of wrap your feet usually around the parts that you think would have the most friction, which was like around the heel, right? And around like the top of the toes. And then you'd wrap it with this and then put your sock on. Um, and then that would be it, I think. And then that's prevention part. But if you find that the other thing is maintenance. So if you're walking along and you're feeling, like you said, Marla, the heat or the moisture or something, stop, take off your stuff, air out your feet, maybe change your socks. But before you change your socks, this was our godsend, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's Compeed, and it's almost like in a little chapstick kind of tube where you just, you know, bring it up. And this, all you had to do was, if you felt like something was coming on right before you felt like anything was going to happen, you stop, you take off your socks, you rub some of this on, and you were good to go for the next couple of hours. At least I
Right.
was, right?
Yep.
I mean, this
Mhm.
this was, I don't think we I don't think we left the US with this, but
No,
we
we picked it
bought
up
this
along the
there.
way. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was the best. Instead of like constantly taking this out to put this on, this was like a quick fix.
But
Put it all over
chapstick
your
for your
feet.
feet.
Yeah, perfect. Chopstick for your
And
feet.
I think though the most important thing that you can really on before outset to a trip like this is that we mentioned it last week, but you have to make sure that your feet are fitted properly to boots,
Mhm.
and you have to size them up because your feet are going to swell between a half size and a size. And if you didn't do either of those things, you're going to feel pressure points in your boots that are going to lead to blisters. There is almost no question of you're going to get it. It's just a matter of when you stop paying attention to it and it decides to form, because blisters are caused by, friction and heat and moisture. And so any one of those conditions. So if you're rubbing around in a boot somewhere, it may not bother you on a 5 mile hike. It may bother you if you're walking 15 miles. So that's, I think, something to
Big
really,
difference. Yeah.
before we, to really back up and think about what we discussed last week, is that your boot fit, it's so critical, because once you have blisters, it requires constant attention and you have to walk through them. And Vilma can tell you more about
Oh yeah.
how you manage that whole process.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, you got blisters too, but not as bad, or not in as bad a spot as I did. My whole pinky toe was just one big blister, like the entire toe. Um, and I wound up losing a nail, and like the blister popped, and the skin fell off. So I had like an open wound. So, in addition to walking with the blister and trying to manage the blister all along, after that, I had to tend to the wound, to
And
the
it was
open.
quite painful, as I
It
recall. You
was
had a
very
day where
painful.
you really struggled with that.
Yeah, yeah. I almost felt like I was feverish. Um, yeah, I was like sick. That's when we stayed. I think that was the first time that we actually stayed at, what was considered a hotel at that time, which,
Mhm.
in our country would be like a little motel, but it was, yeah, we had to, I think we had planned on doing like 17 miles that day. And I think I was able to do 9. And I was like, Marla, you can keep going, whatever your plan is, but I need to stop. Like,
Yeah.
I recognize that at that point, I just needed to chill.
And
And
that's, I guess that's oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so that's when I started to realize that my toe, like the entire toe, was swollen, and
Yeah.
now it had become an open wound in my nail. I don't know where my nail went, but my nail was not there.
Hmm.
So yeah, it was pretty
And
bad.
my issue with blisters is I got mine just because one day I was careless. I was wearing some sandals and they were not strapped properly. So they were a little bit sloppy. And it was that sloppiness that in only a couple of miles brought about a huge blister on the base of on the bottom, the ball of my
Mhm. Yeah,
foot.
I remember.
And it wasn't as serious as Vilma's was in terms of its care, but it definitely was an inconvenience. And truthfully, I was just annoyed with myself that it was just through carelessness. If
Mhm.
I had paid it better attention, I wouldn't have experienced it. So they can creep up pretty fast. And
Yeah.
when you talk about to people on the way, they'll tell you stories about, they had to stop and get care for a blister from a professional, and or they had to go to the ER, or, like
Oh,
blister stuff is really
bad.
real.
Yeah, it's real.
So you need to really pay attention and make sure that you do your best to prevent it, but that you have the stuff to deal with it when it's there, because you may not have the luxury of just sitting back somewhere for a few days
Yeah.
while this thing becomes manageable.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to mention next is that um it's so important. I think the fact that I was well prepared with a first aid kit was probably one of the only reasons I was able to continue and finish,
Mm,
because I think if I didn't have what I had to continue to, you know, nurse myself back to health, I probably would have had to stop because it was that bad.
mm-hmm,
Um, and so I had, what did I have? I had gauze packets, little gauze packets. I had tape, surgical tape. Very important that I used because I had the open wound. I had like little pads of alcohol and little pads of iodine. And that's what I would put every time I dressed it in the morning. I would do the iodine. I would do we had little things of neosporin, right? So I
mm-hmm,
would put neosporin on it. I would wrap it with the gauze, with the tape, or a band-aid. Band-aid wasn't going to help at that point. It was too big of an open wound. But those are the things that I had to manage it, you know, um, and to nurse myself back to health. And I felt like the tighter the tighter I wrapped it, the better off I was.
mm-hmm,
So in that instance where it was the open wound, I dressed it in the morning, and maybe sometime in the afternoon, because of some movement or whatever, I felt it getting a little loose, then I would stop and redo. Um, but it was so important to be well prepared. And again, if it's stuff that you could bring from home, just that first aid, get it at home, because although you will find places along the way, they might not have what you seek. They might not have everything. So just have your packet. Like, if you need to make more room for your first aid kit, I would say get rid of something else and keep that first aid kit, because
mm-hmm.
that's so important.
And I'm surprised you haven't mentioned Compeed.
Yeah, I did. Compeed.
Did you? Oh, no, that's
Oh,
not
you're
what I
talking
meant.
about this one. You're talking about
The
these?
Band-Aid. Isn't that Compeed, those
Yeah.
special
Yep,
Band-Aids?
that's these. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't know what you had, but this is what I had. I had like, it's almost like a second skin,
yeah.
right?
Those are a lot of
Yeah.
people don't like those, but I
Yeah,
love
these are,
them.
they come in like a little container, and there's like a couple of pieces, and I guess you could cut them to size.
Now, but isn't it called Compeed, or is it
Yeah, it
something
is
else?
Compeed. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's something like I would definitely have that in my kit.
Yeah.
Planning on toe blisters or foot blisters, I think Compeed is a very necessary element.
Yeah.
You can bring your own, also bring regular Band-Aids, but
Yes,
I'd
that's
never
what I
used
had.
Compeed before, and I was amazingly pleased with
Yeah. Yeah.
how
Well,
well
I
it
mean, different
performed.
size band-aids, I had big bandages, I had regular bandages, and then I had the little ones,
Yeah.
you know? So, I mean, they don't take up a lot of room. But the other thing that I don't know if you had this, Marla, but I had seen this, I think, on a YouTube video, or maybe just read it online. But these little sleeves for your toes,
I didn't have anything like that.
they're almost like Compeed,
Yeah, I know exactly what that is.
but to go around the toe. And so this helped a lot too. Like I would wrap my toe around, with the gauze, and then this to hold it together,
Hmm.
you know. And so that worked. And even, you could put these on before you get a blister. If you feel like there's some friction that you're noticing in your toes as you're walking, put these on the toes. And then obviously if there's anything rubbing, it's going to be rubbing on this. And this is very soft. It's almost like, what do you call that? Almost like that goo that we used to have like as kids, that
Yeah,
that
yeah, I can kind of sense the
yeah,
texture of it.
that's what, yeah. So it's like very jelly like, and it stays in place because it's so I like those. I had a little bag of those, and I think that's pretty much it that I had for my kit. Did you have anything else that you wanted to
No, the only thing I would go back to is, now that I think about it, it was how valuable the toe socks were in
oh yeah.
prevention. We talked
Mhm.
about that last week, but
Yeah,
definitely if I was striking off, I would be buying myself a couple of pairs of toe socks.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I was so happy to be done with toe socks when we got to Santiago that I literally peeled them off one day and threw them right in the trash because they were threadbare,
Yeah.
and I thought, I'm done with them. But
Right.
when I was
It
there, I
served its
wouldn't have had
purpose.
them. I
Yeah.
wouldn't have been without them.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But you know what I think is probably like, blisters, you should probably plan on having them. That's the reality of it. Some people get through a Camino and they don't have blisters, and that's wonderful, but most of us do. Um, but I think one of the many things that I really admired about you, on when we were on our pilgrimage, is that you really elevated, um, your suffering, because you did one day, that day, that I knew that you were suffering significantly. And I think that that's probably a good thing for you to talk about, because I was so impressed with just how you handled it and what you made of it. And we don't really talk about that very much. So I don't know. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but maybe you want to spend time on that, because people don't get to really hear that very much.
Yeah. Well, I mean, listen, it was very painful, but I felt like, you know, for what it's worth, yeah, I don't know if anyone listening to this is doing the Camino for the same reasons that we did the Camino, right? So
Mhm.
some people are, some people aren't. But my whole purpose was to grow closer to God. So in that, and knowing that, I just recognized that in the suffering, I was joining my suffering to Jesus's.
Mhm.
So, you know, I felt like as I was going through it, I just I was feeling the pain, but felt like it wasn't bad enough to complain about. You know what I mean? It was
Mhm.
just something that I put myself in this position. Like I said I was going to do this. And so here's my opportunity. I I did this to grow closer to God. And so I'm going to depend on God to get me through it.
Mhm.
So in that sense, I'm growing closer to God. So it was just like it was just something that, like, what am I going to do about it? There's nothing I can do about it other than tend to my foot. And in that particular instance, I also recognized that I took my feet for granted. And so it made me realize, like, wow, when I was doing okay and my feet were perfect, I didn't give them any credit.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I got my blister, just like you said, I got my blister for being careless. I remember going down the mountain through the woods in on our way to Roncesvalles. That's where it all happened, right? There were pilgrims passing me left and right. And I was, kind of being careful initially. And then I was like, screw this, man. Everybody's passing me by. I gotta get going. And as I'm going, I'm feeling my feet, you know? and and that's so first of all, I put myself on the Camino. I put myself in that predicament for being careless. Um, I had a purpose for being there, and that purpose was being fulfilled in that whole scenario,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it was just like, all right, here I am. You want me to finish? I'm going to offer it up, and I'm just going to just keep going and keep struggling as much as I can, get through it. Can't whine about it. Who am I going to whine to?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's going through the same thing I'm going through. I put
Yeah.
myself. So it was just keep going, keep going, keep going until you can't go no more. At
Yeah.
this point, I was
I
when I told you I can't do it. I can't.
being on the other side of that and watching you though is that what I saw was sort of this quiet resignation, but I also saw you go like deep inside.
Hmm.
Like you weren't chatty. You weren't it was, we both had times, where we would fall in and out of chattiness, and that's normal. But I remember that day just kind of looking at you as you were walking and realizing that every step you took was an endurance,
Hmm.
and that your struggle was like really internal.
Hmm.
It wasn't just your foot, it was internal, and it took everything you had just to deal with it all, and it so I mean I just remember like watching that and being so impressed that, and I thought, see, that's what offering your suffering looks like. I
Yeah.
remember thinking that to myself.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely, without a doubt.
Yeah.
And it was like I said, it also made me realize, like, we take our bodies for granted. It's just like we wake up in the morning, we step out of bed, and you don't think about your feet. And it's not until something is wrong with your feet and then you feel better that you recognize, wow, these things are amazing.
Yeah, well, I think that's true for all of us all
Yeah,
through our
and for
life.
all of life, even,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
it's like when things are going great, you kind of take things for granted. And then when things turn to pot, then you realize, oh, I want that, what I was taking for granted that I wasn't really recognizing, I want that back. And
Yeah.
then when you get it back, you kind of appreciate it a little more,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And that's what I realized. I realized, like, every step after that blister, every step was important to me. And I was
Hmm.
mindful of every step that I took. Like, I
Yeah.
didn't take it for granted. Like, I was just taking it for granted going through those mountains and through the woods. Like, I just need to get where I'm going. And come on, feet, like, you're not going fast enough. And
Right.
then all of a sudden, it's like, oh, wait a minute, you really want to slow me down, and you did. But now I recognize what that was all about.
Hmm.
And it just served its purpose. And that's
Yeah.
exactly what it was. It was like, okay, I'm trusting in you. I'm praying to you. I'm hoping that you get me through this. You know, it's not about me anymore. It's like that. It's almost like that, the shedding of the self. You know, it's
Yeah.
like it's not about me anymore because I can't. If it was up to me, I'm going home tomorrow.
Yeah. That's what I mean. That's the Camino will have its way with you,
Yeah, without a
you know,
doubt.
in
Without a
one way
doubt.
or another.
Yeah, but it's definitely worth it. I wouldn't change it for the world. I mean, it was
Right. Right.
was a hard lesson, but it was a good lesson.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was good. So, what about you? What about your blister journey? Did you have like a similar struggle or?
No, not really. No, I didn't have anything like that. It wasn't, like I said, it wasn't difficult to manage really. It was kind of an annoyance, didn't cause
Mhm.
me a lot of pain, you know.
Yeah, it was in a
I
good
was
spot.
annoyed with myself for the carelessness, but it
Yeah,
wasn't a big deal
right.
because, the comp heat and everything helped. But yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's right. I remember you had that. That was good. So, that's it, darling.
Yep.
Anything else?
Well, that's it. That's all I got on the
Yeah,
subject of blisters.
yeah, that's all I got. So, what are we doing next week?
I don't know. You'll have to think of something.
Damn. All right. We won't
All
give
right.
we won't give a heads up. We'll just
We won't
figure
give
it
it
out.
away.
Yeah.
Okay.
Keep them coming back. All
How
12,
exciting.
all 12 of you. Oh, and one of them
All
is my
right.
brother who, doesn't even listen to the whole thing. So whatever.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to, he has no interest in doing the Camino, so he doesn't need this advice. But anyway, that's that, dear.
Okay.
All
We'll
right.
see you next time.
See you next time.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.